Okay, we're live. My name is TJ Gamble, and you are watching the eCommerceaholic Friday Beer and eCommerce live stream. Now, today it's going to be a little bit different. I am actually training for the 5K at Magento Imagine, and so I can't have the calories of beer. So today I'm actually going to be drinking a local single malt from John Emerald Distillery, and we are going to be talking about Vue Storefront and progressive web apps. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Piotr Kawatka, and I am CTO of Devant and one of the co-founders of Vue Storefront. Happy to be here. Thanks, TJ, for having me. So I'm ready to answer your question, guys.
Awesome. We're going to be joined by Mark Schust at some point as well. He had a webinar about Docker and Magento 2 a little earlier, so he's trying to wrap that up and try to grab a bite to eat before he joins us. So he is he'll be jumping on here any time now. And so we got a lot of questions from the community. We got a lot of questions on Twitter. So I'm kind of excited to see how it learn a little bit more about Vue Storefront. I'm all in on PWAs. I think this is going to be hot, and I think it's going to be a big deal really quickly. So why don't you tell us, just kind of give us the brief introduction to Vue Storefront? What prompted you guys to go this route? Why are you moving faster than Magento's moving to try to get something out there? Instead of waiting around on their implementation, just kind of lay the groundwork there for where you're at with it.
Yeah, sure. So we started the project last year around August, something like this. And basically we have like two key motivations to start it out. The first was that we've seen that user experience on mobile web is pretty, dissatisfying for the users. If you compare the conversion rates, time spent on native apps, and the same category mobile web, is like a huge gap there. So native apps still are more engaging for the users, more easy to use, more fun to use, and by the way, it's still like another gap there, like the distribution gap. So mobile web is pretty easy to use, to start using. The native apps are hard to distribute. You have to make the users to install them. Basically, some research show that after 3 months of having new phone, basically users are not eager to install any new app. So you have to be like another Facebook or Twitter to convince them that value in your app is so huge to make them, push them to install it. So it's crazy. So we were like user and business focus with the first motivation. The second was about the developer experience, because we were a Magento company for last few good years, like 8 years in the business, and we see that a lot of developers struggling with this technology. It's pretty heavy. It's hard to learn it, to still have a fun developing the Magento shops, because everything changed. JavaScript is right now really hot topic. So we were thinking about making the development fun again. To make the developer experience a lot better than it was before. So that was the second reason. So we built this project to allow the developers to work with really fancy bleeding edge technologies, and in the same time having really being very highly productive. Because on Vue Storefront, you can build your shop in like a few weeks, maybe sometimes in a few days if you don't modify it a lot. So it's really, really rapid. And okay. basically that's all about our motivation. So we started the project as open source, because we've seen that building the e-commerce front end with all the features required to have right now is so broad topic that it's more than any single company can do. So we invited our partners from the very beginning. Right now we have like 28 active contributors, like active developers, about 10 official partners, mostly other Magento companies, Magento agencies from all over the world. So I can say that the community is doing pretty well. We have like 174 guys on Slack asking some questions, doing some implementations, and it's growing like hell. So it's pretty cool. And the community, the engagement of other devs allowed us to be faster than any other project baked by a single company. I think that's the answer to your second question, like why we did make to be faster than others, because we are so strongly supported. Let's go.
Now, is that I see that you've been adding partners. Is that kind of what you're looking for with partnerships? Is you're looking for people to kind of add development capabilities?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, to become our partner, you don't have to build some core features to Vue Storefront. This is, of course, the most natural option to partner with us, and most of the existing partners just develop the product with us. But you can also be a partner and support us with the marketing stuff, like speaking about Vue Storefront, some events, or doing some promotion stuff. So, or maybe just doing the implementations. If you are our official partner, we will support you to convince the client and support you with the implementation. So the partnership is working on a few levels at least. So the contributions are just the first one.
Now, I believe Vue Storefront differs from Deity and obviously the Magento implementation in that you guys are aiming to be e-commerce platform agnostic, correct? Like you're looking to make this thing work with Magento or Shopify or BigCommerce or just about anything that's out there. Is that the goal?
Our initial goal was to be Magento centric, but then we decided it's so cool idea, like the progressive web apps itself. It will be fun to bring it to other platforms as well. So in our core architecture, there is a abstraction layer from the platform. So basically, you can connect Vue Storefront to virtually any platform. Right now, we have working connectors to Magento 2, to PIMcore CMS. And now we are doing some research about Magento 1 connector. Few of our clients wanted it, so we are working on this Magento 1 connector. It will be available in the next few weeks, I believe. So yeah, this is the way we do. So it's platform agnostic, and this has I would say pretty interesting implications. Because I'm not pretty sure like what will be included in PWA Studio or Deity. Of course, I've seen all the webcasts they publish about what they already have, the demo of Deity and so on. It seems like they are building the PWA front end, having huge support from the backend piece of this puzzle. So they implement a lot of things still on the backend, which is pretty obvious for PWA. They have to support all the extensions and this kind of stuff. And we had this discomfort that we cut off from Magento. We cut off from this backend stuff, and we tried to build Vue Storefront as more like a native app than a theme, than a front end. So it just works on your mobile phone. It's 100% JavaScript. We have shopping cart. We have data models there. We have the whole checkout. This also makes Vue Storefront working offline, because it's the whole logic is performed on client side. So this is the key difference from the other projects you mentioned.
Yeah. So, my concern with it would be, and I need to get this thing open. Let's go ahead and get the sound effect here. There we go. But my concern with it would be that if you're trying to make it available for every platform and you're trying to make it adhere to every platform, then functionality is going to be a least common denominator. And do you actually lose the benefit of every platform by trying to make it available for each platform? And for instance, do you lose some of the uniqueness of Magento and the ability to quickly add functionality by making your platform kind of work with everything? And so that's really one of my biggest concerns with that approach.
Okay, so I believe that each approach has its own upsides and downsides, of course. But our approach is to not be like have the minimal common denominator among all the platforms we support. We are really focused on Magento right now, so our plan is to have 100% of the standard features of Magento implemented and ready to use. Then we are looking what other platforms have and how it works. Of course, by designing the API layer, we are just checking if okay. For example, user authorization, we use some common method like the JavaScript tokens, and it should work with any other platform that have good APIs. So we are trying to make it abstract, but to some degree. Like we don't want to lose any cool features of the platform we are supporting, and the Magento is one of the strongest right now. So this will be our priority for sure. Then the other thing is that we plan to have the other platform support built by the third-party extensions. So it will be more than, if you need, for example, PrestaShop support, you install the bridge to import the products, categories, and other stuff, and then you install some NPM Node.js modules for example, having some specific features of PrestaShop also there. So it's very modular, and the modularity, I think, is the answer here. So if somebody will like to add the PrestaShop support, we don't have it right now, but if somebody like to add it, go on and create some set of extensions, bundle of extensions that you can install to Vue Storefront. So the core will be simple. Like, okay, the core is like having the core features e-commerce should have, like checkout, promotion rules, all this kind of stuff. And then there are some extensions. For example, right now, one of our partners from UK built a Magento like general Stripe payments support, and it's also an extension on GitHub. You just install it by npm install Vue Storefront Stripe payments. Yeah, this is the name of the package, I believe. So it's very extendable. So no, we don't want to lose any cool features of specific platforms by being the minimal common denominator. Rather, we like to have pretty cool extensions, some built by us, some built by our partners.
Okay, Kevin Earl Gardner here, fellow Alabamian, has asked, when you mentioned that you're going to have, you hope to have all of the Magento features available via Vue Storefront, is that the community features, or are you going all the way to the entire enterprise set of features?
So in the core, probably there will be the community features to make it like, okay, we are open source, Magento is open source, you don't have to pay to use our software. And then we probably will add some enterprise features as extensions. I'm not sure if they will be also open source. Probably yes, I'm not sure. But our business model is not like the product itself. It will be open source for for a life would always be like MIT. But answering to this question straight to the point, in the current version of Vue Storefront project on GitHub, there will be full coverage of Community Edition, and other features of Enterprise will be added as extensions, I believe. This can change. We can change our mind in the process. So don't bind to it. But today it looks like this.
So another question, and I think that some of these questions, we get multiple questions from multiple people, and so some of them may overlap. So we may talk about several subjects in several different ways, but one of the concerns, again, that kind of goes back to that working with multiple platforms, or even this approach in general, is that does that create an entire new ecosystem of modules that support Magento's PWA implementation and Deity and Vue Storefront? Do I have to then look for modules that work with the Vue Storefront, or can I, or either that, or I have to add the overhead of writing the front end completely from scratch for any other module that I want to download?
Yeah, this is really good point. Good question. So basically, right now it's like if you have some cool extension you would like to use with Vue Storefront, you need to rewrite the UI part, the front end. It's pretty obvious, right? The current extensions work with Magento themes engine. It doesn't support like PWA Studio, DT, Vue Storefront. In each case, you have to deal with the same problem. So what I was thinking some time ago was to maybe create kind of standard for PWAs, because as you already mentioned, there are some other projects doing pretty similar stuff to our. So we were thinking about kind of standard. This is an open topic. We plan to discuss it with James and Andrew from Magento next week in Eindhoven on ReactEcon, and the guys from Data as well, to discuss how this standard can look like. My initial idea was to create it based on the web components standard, so you can create custom elements for some UI parts, and the standard, like the format of those components, the interface will be the same for any platform, any headless platform you work with. So if you are an extension developer, you just build it once and have it running, up and running for each platform. This is kind of solution. I'm not sure if the guys from Magento and Data will be interested in this. So let's discuss it. But basically, if not, then probably it will be like the extensions developer will be more focused on the API part, the part which to this point was very often skipped by the extension developer. The API is really important. If the extension will have APIs, the front-end part is really easy in most cases, of course. So it's like developing the native app. It's pretty similar to this from the process point of view. The biggest benefit is that you write it just once and it works on each platform. Right? The process looks pretty similar. We have there was a question on Twitter, I believe, so about the teams and how do you work with Storefront. So maybe I will answer to this question because it's somehow connected. The question was if it's like you get just the components from Vue Storefront and use it in your Vue.js or JS app, or is like creating the themes for Vue Storefront, or maybe overriding the components, how it looks like. So this is crucial to understand what we are building, because as I said before, it's standalone app. It works on your device, it works on your phone, it works on your browser. You don't need to have any internet connection even. So it really, like, the whole logic is there. And then if you plan to build your implementation on Vue Storefront, you don't override the core. You don't override our logic, our data stores, anything. You just create one or two things, like themes and extensions. It works pretty similarly to Magento extensions and themes. So you can create like extension based on some, for example, some other payment methods. You can, based on our payment extension gateway, inject some components to some places in the front end, exchange data by events. Then you can build your team, override some, by override I mean like inherit from some core components, add your own logic, add your own look and feel, and still the core is fully updatable. So you can just update it via npm or git. So that was our goal, to make it really modular and really flexible. So this is kind of framework you base on building your own PWA. It works out of the box. So in the, let's say, simplest case, you just get Vue Storefront, make it up and running by 2 commands. It has like interactive installer, so it's a really straightforward process to make it up and running. It's integrated with Magento too, so also no additional work required. And then you apply your styles, your look and feel, and it works. If you need some custom features, then you create the extensions or just your own Vue.js components embedded to that thing. So it's pretty straightforward. The feedback I got is like building new shop on Vue Storefront is like 2-3 weeks for the guys that were not familiar with the Vue.js. So this is pretty cool.
Okay. And most of these questions are, again, they're touching on a lot of the kind of same basic principle. And the concern that most of the people who have asked questions have is around functionality and costs. And it all, what's the trade-off? I've got a direct message question here that, kind of what's the trade-off with PWAs is a question. You have things around, how difficult, like I touched on earlier, how difficult is it to make third-party modules work with Magento, and how many, how much functionality is going to be there. A lot of the things we've touched on. So I'm trying to go through everyone's questions here just to make sure that I have them answered. So I'm just going to start going through some of these questions. And so the first one being, what is the trade-off? Like, obviously PWAs are great. They're mobile friendly. People love them. They're going to help your sales. But what at this stage, short term and long term, what's the trade-off in general PWAs and also Vue Storefront? Like, what are you losing by going that direction?
I think that the main trade-off is with the extensions. So in any solution on the market or going to the market like PWA Studio and DT, I believe there will be a challenge with the extensions. You cannot use the HTML produced by the extensions that are available on the market right now, because it's sometimes it's not responsive for like the RWD. Sometimes it's just using some other incompatible or legacy JS framework. So this will be the main challenge. If you are using a lot of UI extensions, like adding some sliders or other fancy stuff on the front end, it will be hard to just plug them in. You would have to build the front end for the extensions on your own. I think that it will be lowering by the time the extensions developer must at some point support the PWA. The good news is that you can mix the framework. So if the extensions developer will develop the UI based on React, we can still use it in Vue.js. More or less, it depends how it goes with the standardization of the components. The same with Vue.js. If they use Vue.js, probably it will be doable to embed it in React and so on. So we will see. Of course, this is the main challenge I see for guys who are using a lot of extensions. But to be honest, from my point of view, like customers I spoke with, it's very often not a big deal. Like they typically invest a lot into the existing front end. It's very customized. They didn't use a lot of UI components. They use like existing components for payment methods, shipping methods, and so on. These kind of components are pretty easy to port to Vue Storefront and I believe other PWA platforms because they are more backend than frontend. If you have extensions working only on the backend or some integration extensions, no changes are required. So this is good news. So yeah, I think that the only case is with the extension on front.
I think a big I'm Mark here. I've been lurking in here. How you doing? I think a big elephant in the room too is Apple, right? They don't support service workers yet. So if I wanted to build a cross-platform app right now and release it in a week, it won't be available on Apple.
Yeah, I mean that is a downside. The benefit is that you still have a super user-friendly, fast website. You just don't have some of the service worker capabilities, and I don't see that as a huge detriment, especially with Apple, adding that functionality. But yeah, I didn't announce Mark when he came in, so he had to save me because I had to go get ice for my drink here. Because I'm not manly enough just to drink this at room temperature, even though it's pretty good stuff. So I had to add a little coolness to it here.
I'm running on water, so sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. Like I said, this is casual. Drink what you brung. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, but going back to service worker, I just add one point here because yeah, that's true. Like today, the iOS is not supporting it, but they will be like in the next few weeks. So it's like kind of distribution problem. They already have this support, so it's only the installment base challenge to install it on all iOS devices. The second thing is that, for example, Vue Storefront is using service workers, but the key offline capabilities are done using something else. So we are not caching like the offline support is there for iOS or even right now with Vue Storefront because we are using the different strategy for caching data. We are not using service workers to cache the products and categories and orders. We are using IndexedDB. This is the database you have available in your browser. It stores JSON objects. So we are using IndexedDB to cache out the data. Of course, we cannot cache, for example, images using service workers if they are not available. We still have all the legacy browser cache for this. So from my test on the iPhone, Vue Storefront works pretty well, even if the internet is down. So it's something that you can bypass right now. It's not like exactly what you expect as a developer to have, but it's doable. So we started with some fallbacks for some features like offline support, like IndexedDB. If you don't have IndexedDB, Vue Storefront still works using the local storage and so on. Because this is e-commerce and it's extremely important to support as many platforms as you can, right?
I had a question around offline support. So let's say I have 1 million products in my store. How does it find the correct product that pulled back? And then with payments, how does that all work offline?
Yeah, two classical questions. I always hear them when speaking about Vue Storefront. So the first about the catalog. Right now we have pretty simple strategy of caching. Like we do cache the products from categories you visited. So for example, when you go to men's apparel category, we cache out all the products from this category. Even if you just open the first two, we cache all the products there. Then the same with other categories. So when you go offline, the categories you were in are available on your browser. You can browse them. Of course, if you have like categories with few dozen thousand products or few million products, it won't work because it will use like few gigabytes of your memory on some older Samsung or other phones. It will be a problem. So the other strategy is to create categories that are just available during the offline. So special categories like top products or something like this. And I think that also the another strategy is to just rotate the cache to find the good proportion of the number of products you can cache. Right now it's very simple, but it's easy to customize it in the code, so you can change this strategy. The second question.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, continue.
Okay. So the second question was about the orders, right? So it works like we queue all the orders the user make, also in Extensibility database. So we store them. If the internet is available, we send them directly to the backend. If not, we wait and send the orders when the internet is available. And the payments in this situation are the electronic payments are just disabled. So you can have just cash on delivery, but at some point we will add a kind of pay by links to this scenario. So if you have user that is offline and would like to make an order, it's doable, and we will send them the links to the payments after we confirm the order, because the stock quantities is another problem here. We are not sure if the problem is still available, so it's hard to confirm all the orders made during the offline period because it can run out. We store some stock quantities in a local browser database, so we knew what was the last stock quantity when you had internet, but of course it can change very quickly, so it can be not relevant. So it's hard to confirm the orders made during this period. So this is also a usability problem, right? That all platforms have to deal with. I'm not sure if this is the best idea we had. It's pretty easy. It's a good starter for sure, and then we have to take a look at it.
Yeah, we had a question. It kind of relates to the product loading and the caching you were talking about, so I'll jump right to that one. But we've got several questions in the chat we need to try to address. Kevin Gardner asked, how heavy would the web application be as far as the data, the download, storage on a phone if he had 1 million+ products? And I'm assuming there's some sort of grooming, and you're just not going to store them all. But I just wanted to give you a chance to make sure we touched on that.
Yeah. So to be honest, we didn't test it on 1 million SKUs right now. We tested on 100K SKUs databases. It's used like something around 50 to 80 megabytes. To store them all the products in your local browser cache. It means that we also store the pictures, like the thumbnails for those products, and this is the majority of the cache. The JSON objects are not so huge. But I think that this is not something that you can realistically do, like cache 1 million products in user devices. It's crazy. Some devices have limitations. After 50 megabytes of used indexed or service worker cache, they just notify the user if he or she allow the app to use some more. So I think that's good. And of course, this also affects the performance, because on some older devices, there are some funny stories that accessing data from internet is faster than accessing it from local cache. So you can imagine that it can be not reliable method to store the data. So I think this is open question. This is open question, open challenge. I think that If the offline access is key for your app, for your store, then you have to look at it from the business point of view, not from the technical point of view. Like which products are really key to have during the offline, and choose like 1, 2, 3,000 products to be available offline. This is just, you know, the only method that seems for me pragmatic. Let's say pragmatic.
Sure. And by the way, you know, public service announcement, you know, a little bit of, you know, help me out. If you're enjoying us sitting here talking about these things, hit that subscribe button while you're at it. You know, we'd look forward to having you as part of the e-commerceaholic family. We try to do these just about every Friday. This one's a little earlier in the day than normal, but we're trying out something new here. This is also the first real interview that we've done. It looks like we've got, you know, quite a few people watching. So maybe this time frame, or maybe it's just the topic of PWAs that has everyone excited, but seems to be a great turnout and a lot of great questions in the chat. The next question I wanted to touch on, Mohammed posted in the chat about FPC. Is it server side rendered or client side? I'm assuming, you know, there's a lot of three-letter acronyms out there. I'm assuming he's talking about full page cache, which correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that's one of those things that's kind of solved to a certain degree by the whole JavaScript, React, Vue. You know, elements on the page don't necessarily have to be re-rendered. So is full page cache handled? Is it something that's really needed in a PWA? You know, you store data locally, but if it's handled, if it's needed, is it server side rendered or client side?
Yeah, so basically the full page cache is not so relevant to, you know, single page applications and the things we are building, but we can do this because we are using server-side rendering. So it means that if you go to, for example, demo.vuestorefront.io, which is our official demo, and take a look at Vue source, like source code, you can see that the browser is provided with full HTML rendered server-side. We are using Vue.js SSR capabilities. There are a few really nice frameworks for this in Vue ecosystem, like Nuxt.js and others. So we are rendering the whole HTML server side, which is pretty good for SEO, of course, as you can imagine. It's really well indexable by Google and so on. And it's also pretty good for the loading speed on the client side, because you don't have to build the whole DOM in JavaScript, which basically is pretty fast. But time to display the first elements is much faster than when you use server-side rendered markups. So we can do full page caching using some varnish or something like this, no problem. But in most cases, it makes no sense, because we just provide pretty simple HTML markups and then do caching on some web service calls and API calls.
I had a somewhat related question. So Magento's PWA is going to use React and Redux and GraphQL. So like I was wondering how Vue Storefront, how the data comes into it. Do you use GraphQL? And then how does, I'm assuming you're using some portion of Vuex instead of Redux. And how does that all work? And then like, how are the debugging tools, you know, compared to Redux tools and dev tools and that whole state management piece?
Yeah, good question. So basically, we manage the data using Vuex, as you said. Vuex is kind of Redux, but for Vue.js. It works using the same principles and design patterns, so it's pretty good tool for managing the state of the app. And also Vue.js has really good debugging tools. Vue.js Inspector for Chrome is one of the most popular ones. You can debug the Vuex data stores and components tree and a few dozen other things using these tools. It's pretty similar to the tools you have with React. So I would say the ecosystem of tooling is pretty comparable for those two frameworks. Yeah, so we are using Vuex for data management. We are not using GraphQL right now. We are using just the REST APIs. We were basically are considering if to move to GraphQL at some point. Probably not so fast. Magento doesn't have great GraphQL support right now. Doesn't have it at all, but they are working on it. So this will be next huge thing for Magento API users, and maybe then we will decide to use it. But at this point, we have our own middleware for the API calls, working on REST calls, and it's good enough. So we don't see any motivation to going to GraphQL at this point.
On Twitter, we had a question from David. I think I could answer this one, but I'll leave it to you. Is Vue Storefront able to support multiple websites and stores? Pretty much if you have like a Magento multi-site install,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you would just have a different Vue Storefront for everyone because they're independent. But is that kind of how that would work?
Yeah, if you like to have it today, like this setup of multi-site, you just run Vue Storefronts, configure to use different endpoints and different Elasticsearch catalog. It's fully configurable in config-wise, so it's the way you do this right now. But this is also on our roadmap. So I plan it for 1.1 or 1.2 release. We add this support natively to Storefront, so you will be able to switch the language and other stuffs related to the store view or website view in the single app. So we have it on our roadmap. We have some R&D done for this, so it will be available soon.
Okay. Also, Kevin Earl Gardner, he had asked a couple of questions on Twitter that were answered as far as how much of the current Magento 2 Enterprise API does this PWA access and utilize. And I'll let you touch. I'll kind of go through all of these, and you can touch on all of them. He also asked, how easy is it to adapt the Vue-based PWA to custom extensions, which we have touched on already. And then he followed up with, our unit tests for the platform keeping pace with development? Because it looks, maybe the unit test folder on your repos a little on the light side.
Yeah, they don't, but we must to take care of this. This is also something we plan to, let's say, cover in the next few releases. We were very focused on adding features because of the pace and the release dates we prepared. So this is something we of course need to have. Right now everything was like changing a lot until 1.0 LC released 2 weeks ago. So right now the API is more stable, and for sure we will build this test base around it.
Okay. We had the question in the chat, and Aurelio, I believe, forgive me if I mispronounced that name, but their thought, Aurelio's thought was, what are your thoughts or concerns around the fragmented effort of the PWA initiative in the Magento community, in that rather than everyone rallying around the Magento standard and waiting for that and then kind of helping flesh that out, and all of that effort could be going into the base Magento or core Magento, everyone's kind of rallying around these varying fragmented systems like Deity or the Vue Storefront. So do you see any concerns with that kind of fragmentation and division of effort, or do you feel like that's a good thing?
I think that's a good thing, and I think that especially nowadays there's no thing like the best solution for PWA. There will be no best solution for PWA for e-commerce for Magento. We see very interesting things like Vue Storefront is, for example, an enable for agencies and companies that are not familiar with Magento. The learning curve for Magento is very steep. For Vue.js and Vue Storefront is much easier to get into. And if you have to build some e-commerce, it's sometimes you have to build e-commerce and you were just front-end dev, not having nothing familiar with Magento. It's much easier to choose Vue Storefront. It's enabler for you to build Magento site. If you decide to go with DT or PWA Studio, they are very bound to Magento specifics with all upsides and downsides, of course. So I think that also depends how you define the community. Like in the Magento community, it's possible that all the guys are waiting for this best solution from Magento PWA Studio. I think it's pretty natural. Let's see how it will be looking like. I know that the guys from Magento have really hard work to do. Like they have to challenge a lot of problems to be compliant with the Magento standard, with the extensions and so on. This is pretty limiting. I think it can be pretty limiting for them. We don't have such limitations. Also with upsides and downsides. Of course, the Magento PWA will be a huge success. I'm pretty sure it will be. But we are aiming also for some different user groups. So I think that there is the place for each project from PWA category. And I think it's good that it's so distributed because it makes some little feeling of competition between the projects. They try to be as good as they could within their architectures and so on. But I'm not feeling that I'm competing with anybody. Really, I'm just I don't give a shit about it, to be honest.
I understand, and I think it's a good thing, especially seeing how we've really had two kind of come to the forefront with Deity and Vue Storefront, and they're built with different frameworks. I think the approach is more similar than you necessarily stated there. We've got Jamie in the and again, if I mispronounce someone's name, I barely speak English. I'm from Alabama. I'm sorry. But Jamie Maria, it appears. The screen's way up there. It's hard for me to read. But she was clarifying in the chat that it appears as though Deity, and I'm going to try to have Deity on here to do this as well. It's kind of the same thing. And their approach is more similar to yours in that they're not trying to tie to Magento specifically either. And they are... let me get her quote right here. We have a Node.js layer which is fully compatible with anything which has an API. So it does seem like they are also building a standalone progressive web app that maybe is built and designed around Magento's features and functionality, but is not tied to it. Like you can easily change out whatever the back end of the system is or custom write your own. And correct me in the chat there, Jamie Maria, if or Mariah, how am I pronouncing that? Correct me if that's incorrect, please. Okay, she's saying the same thing, pretty much the same idea as Vue, just different technologies being used there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to copy us because we are open source from the day zero. So you can just copy this idea with platform agnostic, with other things. So it's good that other follow us. It's great. I'm happy with that.
Okay. Yeah, we've got Lesh finally made it. we're a little early for Telesh. I get it. People have work to do. Sorry about that. But I'm just reading through the chats, getting fairly active here. I'm making sure we didn't miss anything. Apparently, Deity's been working on theirs for a couple of years now. And again, I've got some questions here from Twitter I wanted to go over that I think we've touched on already, but I want to make sure that specifically these are answered. Philip Jackson on Twitter has asked, how does the Vue storefront approach differ from the Magento approach? We see a full SPA, again, the three-letter acronyms. In this context, you guess what that means, or just a per-page app, checkout-only app as the Magento approach seems to be heading. And he may have a little more info than I do on exactly Magento's approach or what he means there. But how do you obviously Magento is tying to Magento. They're not really trying to build, or at least I wouldn't think they would be trying to build a progressive web app that you can tie into any platform. So other than that difference, obviously, again, they would be trying to make it as flexible and easy to move from their old theming system to a PWA, whereas you are trying to be a little more separated from the Magento system. Other than that key difference, is there anything there you see that's worthy of noting?
I think that you made a good point with this distinction about the approaches. I see it the same way. I'm not so close with PWA Studio projects, so I'm not knowing about everything they approach to make there. But I see it's pretty similar. Regarding the first part of question about the SPA or let's say legacy page distributed e-commerce, we are both because of the SSR, so you can access Vue Storefront on any page and have this markup rendered directly to your browser from the server. And then when you load the first page, it's single page application, so all the pages you browse to are rendered on your browser. So yeah. Strange answer, like we are both.
Yeah, I think, also we've got, Jamie Mariah there on the chat was, I think she keyed in on the word copy as far as talking about the approaches. I don't know if anyone here is necessarily saying that they copied their approach. I think they've been working on their approach for a long time. It's an approach that makes a lot of sense, and it's not too terribly proprietary to try to build a platform agnostic progressive web app. So I don't think I don't know if I said the word copy or if you said the word copy. I just want to clarify. I don't think anybody here is implying that anyone is copying anyone else's ideas.
I didn't mean anything wrong, right? I really support DT project. Is cool. To be clear here, we are all about copying. We are MIT licensed, so it's it's all about the copying. We copy a lot of ideas from other projects. I think this is what open source should be about. So it was more distinct what I meant.
I should be drumming up the drama. Drama is all about views, right? Like, maybe we get you both in here and we just have a cage match or something.
DT is cool project. If you like React, go with DT for sure. Fingers crossed.
Just logistically, I believe they have a little bit of a benefit in that Magento chose React, and so they chose React. So I think that will appeal to a lot of people. I don't know exactly how that plays out in the long term. I don't know that much about Vue itself or the decision making that went into making that selection. Why don't you fill me in on the decision making that went into Vue?
Yeah. This is also a good point. A lot of guys are asking me about it. To be honest, the key decision was the learning curve of Vue.js, because Other features like virtual dump support, performance, other kind of attributes are pretty similar. Comparing React to Vue is more or less the same approach, but basically the learning curve is much steeper for React than to Vue.js. So as we are addressing the e-commerce developers, the e-commerce front-end guys that work with platforms like Magento, Shopify, and others, typically are just HTML, CSS guys. Of course, doing a lot of JavaScript, but more front-end related guys than the back-end developers. And we try to make the shop where the UI is customized pretty similarly to what they already know. So Vue.js is much easier to learn when you are starting with the JavaScript development. That was our key reason, and it's growing like hell, like much faster than React. Of course, the base for the React was much higher because it's longer on the market. But the Vue is really fast growing, and the community is huge. So I feel really good with this choice, and also it differentiate us from other projects, PWA Studio and others. So I think this is good because I don't like to compete with an embedded. It's not in my nature. I would prefer to be in this niche of Vue.js, which is pretty huge. And it's the go-to product for any Vue.js developers that need to do something with e-commerce, and it's cool for me.
Yeah, as far as the competition goes, again, it goes back to being a nice, clean separation in that you're using different technologies, and so it's good that we have two different platforms in that when someone is coming in to build a website, whether it be a merchant with developers or whatever, I mean, everything's going JavaScript, and the front end is going to be the one-page JavaScript app. And it's great to have two different platforms to build off of, dependent upon the experience that you already have on your team. And you don't have to, if you chose Vue and you're using Vue for something else, you don't have to start over and learn React. You can pick the platform that works the best for you, and then you can move forward and get something up quickly and cheaply.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm a big React fan. I built apps in React, and but I've also built an app in Vue. I think Vue aligns better with the PHP dev because it's the template-based system, and there's less JavaScript. It's kind of it does have their proprietary language in there, but I think they could both, exist together. They're just two completely different solutions, and I think they could both work. I think it depends on the type of developers you have on staff too. If you have a whole JavaScript team that has React experience, it doesn't make any sense to build on Vue, and vice versa. If you have strong backend team that is familiar with, because Vue was picked as the by Laravel, as their official JavaScript framework, kind of for that reason. But yeah, I think it is interesting. No one built one for Angular though.
Yeah,
I'm going to jump right on that. Yeah.
It's a different story, like with Angular. I really like Angular, to be honest. It's a really good framework. Even like 2 days ago, we were discussing with the team, like not Vue.js team, but other team at Devante. We were discussing some project we are doing with the Angular. It's a pretty huge project, and Angular fits perfectly well there.
Yeah, Vue is kind of like a mini Angular, really.
Yeah, it's pretty
like a more verbose.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that it is also a good choice for Angular developers to stick to Vue because some ideas are really similar, like components and all. Yeah, it works pretty the same way.
Well, I've got so many questions here we've gone through. Forgive me if I ask the same question again. Just reach through the screen and slap me if I go through something we've already covered. But one thing of note here, one of the questions that market that I want to make sure we touch on is, what do you see or what do you expect now and in the future as kind of the cost and turnaround time of a project in a Vue storefront implementation and versus something custom written in React or something using Magento's own PWA offering, whenever that's available?
I have no clue about other platforms or Magento PWA cost of implementation. No idea, but I can say what I see from our approaches to the clients that ask us for the offer for Vue Storefront. So basically, the key factor of the key two factors of the time and budget are, if you need some third-party platform integration, like other than Magento 2, which is ready-made and works really good. If so, you need like something like 1 month for one developer to build this this bridge. For example, for Magento 1, is something like this kind of cost. And then the second question is about the features. It's always a question: how customized shop do you have? So you should go through all the features and try to estimate them. But basically, the costs are something like like very basic mobile app, something like this, one platform. It's hard for me to say some numbers because it depends on the hourly rate and so on. Basically, you can have Vue Storefront up and running in like 1 month, something like this. If you have customized shop, it will be like more closer to 3 months or something like this. It depends. We try to do some workshops before creating estimations always. And we have also an idea of proof of concept. This is something interesting, probably, that to build some very limited version of your app, but it's very well optimized for mobile. You can run it on some subdomain or something, no risk, no whole migration and this kind of stuff, which is pretty scary for shop owners. Just try out on some subdomain, check if the CRO is higher. CR is higher than on mobile web and so on. So I think that's this makes sense, like to do some tests with users, do some tests with clients and so on. Start easy and extend.
We've had a I don't think the term was coined in the chat. I believe someone mentioned that it's been around for a while in the Magento community, and it's a very interesting term for the Magento community, and it applies to what we've been talking about here, and that is we're not in competition. We're in, it's kind of cooperation, so it's Coopertition, I guess is how you would pronounce that. And I agree with that. That's, we're an SI, and if you were on Twitter today, you'll see Kalen's debate on the term SI, or solutions integrator, or systems integrator. I don't know. Again, another acronym, but it's a great term because we do meetups. We work with other agencies. We've actually done development where other agencies did design, and so we definitely enjoy the co-opetition aspects of the Magento community, and I think that's very applicable here. I think that both Vue Storefront and Deity and Magento's PWA will all benefit from each other's efforts.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. So we've been on about an hour and 5 minutes here. We've got plenty of time. I mean, I've got another call at 2:30 or my time, 3:30 Eastern. Anything else in particular you wanted to cover while we're on the stream?
Okay, so first question to me, right?
Yes, you're the guest. Mark works for Jamerson, so I'm not asking him any questions. I'll rope him into a private conversation and ask questions if I need to. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to talk about as far as Vue Storefront? What do you guys have coming up? Are there any surprises? We've got Imagine coming up. Are you going to be there? Are you having a booth at Imagine? Like, how are we selling this thing?
Yeah, we do have some booth at Imagine as advantage. So if you are going there, just catch up with us and have some beer, coffee, or anything. Discuss PWA and other stuff. So it's great. Great chance to meet us. What next? So we are releasing the 1.0 stable in next 3 weeks, 1st April. It's not like April Fool's Day, but it will be a real release. So this is something we are working on right now. The API won't change, so you can use Vue Storefront tomorrow, today even. It's ready for implementations. So basically, I just wanted to invite everybody who's interested to chat with us on our Slack. The link, invitation link, is on GitHub. So if any more questions are there, just don't hesitate to join our Slack. And also, we are still searching for partners. So if you like to support the project or just to learn some more technical side, you need some support with your clients thinking on PWA, we can support you with this. Yeah, and basically that's all. So we are thinking about growing our partners base, user base, and of course the product itself.
Nice. And Talesh is not a fan of Slack. Do you know Talesh?
Yeah, I met him in New York, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Well, apparently he's not a fan of Slack, and he's scorning you promoting your Slack channel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't really have a problem with it. Now, the thing is I'm a member of probably close to a dozen groups, it seems. I think I've got about 6 of them loaded up on my Slack here, but I never go to any of them except for the internal Jamerson Slack. What would you prefer, Talesh? Email? I mean, come on.
Who doesn't like Slack?
What's wrong with Talesh?
Not a true tech person if you don't like Slack.
Sometimes I worry about Talesh, though. I really do. Sometimes I worry about him. He tries to live in a Jeep. He just travels around. And I think he's going a little insane, a little stir crazy, being stuck in Toronto for so long. So I'm worried about him. He's an IRC fan, apparently. All right. Well, I think with that, I appreciate you being on. I think this was a great conversation. Hopefully it was useful to everyone that's out there. Again, remember to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified. Tap that notification bell so you'll know when we go live again. Try to do this every Friday. And, we'll try to get maybe some folks from Deity on as well to talk about their technology. I've got a small Magento agency, young guy starting a Magento agency that I'm trying to get lined up for next week. So I'm going to get several agency owners on just to kind of give some pointers. He had some questions on how to grow his agency. So I'm excited about trying to help him. So definitely check back with us next Friday. We had great participation. The chat was extremely lively. We've probably had more watchers, more viewers, more view time than any. And when I say probably, we've had absolutely more talk in the chat and more viewers than we've ever had on this live stream. So I'm going to give all credit to Vue Storefront and the topic, but I'm also going to A/B test that by having this maybe earlier in the day next week as well. So again, that's great. I love, having these live streams, even though Piotr here didn't drink with us this week. He had the water.
Next time, TJ. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. It's great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. So we're going to call it quits, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Always. Bye.